It's strange how life can flip upside down in the blink of an eye. One moment, everything is normal, just a drive like any other, and the next, people are whispering about an accident no one saw coming. We're not here to confirm rumors, but something definitely shifted in Adam Moran's life, and longtime fans noticed it. If you followed BeardMeatsFood from the beginning, you know his journey wasn't just about stuffing down burgers and wings. It was about something deeper, maybe even escape. Adam never said much about the change, but it was there. A slightly longer pause before his jokes. A flicker of something behind the smile. While the world saw a fun, unstoppable competitive eater, a few caught on to the silence behind the screen. This video isn't about speculating or exploiting, it's about understanding. Behind every food challenge conquered thumbnail, there's a real man who once served in the military, battled loneliness, and built a brand from the ground up. Something happened. Maybe it was a loss, maybe it was a moment that shook his foundation, but it left a crack, a soft sadness fans didn't know how to name. And yet, he kept going. He kept uploading. He kept smiling. That's what makes this story heartbreaking. It's not about what we saw. It's about what he never said. So today we're peeling back the curtain on Adam Moran. Not the YouTube star, not the eating machine, but the man. The human being behind BeardMeatsFood. Whether you're a new subscriber or someone who's been there since the early Blackpool videos, you've probably felt the shift too. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why. The food was never the full story. It was a cover for something much deeper. Before the world knew him as BeardMeatsFood, Adam Moran was someone else entirely. Quieter, more reserved, and far removed from the spotlight. Born in the UK, Adam never had dreams of being a YouTuber or social media figure. In fact, his early life was more about structure and service. He spent years in the British Army, something most fans didn't even know until he casually mentioned it in passing during a Q&A. That part of his life shaped him in a way few understand. Discipline, order, pain tolerance, it all became part of who he was. But once he left the military, there was this strange emptiness. Like a chapter closed and no new one began. He tried normal jobs, the regular life, but something felt off. That spark of adrenaline, that push to test limits, it was still in him. It wasn't fame he was chasing, it was purpose. So one day, on a whim, he sat down in front of a camera with a massive plate of food. No script, no big plan, just curiosity. And people watched. Not thousands at first, just a few. But the feedback lit something in him. They didn't just comment on the food, they saw him. His dry humor, his sarcasm, the way he never made eating seem gross. It was a strange gift, and he ran with it. Slowly, video by video, he built the BeardMeatsFood brand. But those early videos tell a story of a man still figuring out who he was outside the military, outside structure, outside pain. And behind the eyes, even then, there was something heavy. Maybe it was a secret he didn't share. Whatever it was, it stayed with him. And it traveled into every bite, every joke, every mile driven to the next food challenge. Before he was BeardMeatsFood, Adam Moran was a man in transition. And that journey, the quiet pain mixed with quiet hope, is the part most people never saw. At first glance, BeardMeatsFood might seem like just another wild eating channel. Giant burgers, towering pizzas, milkshakes bigger than your head. But if you've watched long enough, you know Adam Moran brings something different. There's precision. There's a rhythm to his madness, like each chew has purpose. What most people never realized is that the food was never the real point. For Adam, these challenges became a way to manage something much deeper. He's spoken briefly about his battles with mental health, though never in a dramatic way. But it's there. In the consistency, the control, the obsession with routine. For a man who once lived in the strict structure of the military, the chaos of civilian life can be disorienting. And food, oddly enough, offered structure again. Timers, rules, objectives, failure, victory, all of it made sense to him. And that's why watching him eat felt so different from watching others. You weren't just seeing a guy devour 10,000 calories, you were seeing someone channel something heavy into performance. The heartbreak, perhaps, isn't in the videos themselves, but in knowing that behind the speed and the spectacle, there was a man wrestling quietly with the invisible. People joked about his stone-faced expressions during impossible meals, but those who paid close attention started to see that same expression even when the cameras were off. That quiet look, almost like his mind was somewhere else entirely. The truth is, many of the people who fall into competitive eating do so not out of joy, but out of need. A need to feel something, a need to numb something, or sometimes a need to be seen. Adam turned food into therapy, into routine, into a shield. And while millions laughed and cheered him on, only a few realized that the real battle wasn't happening on the plate. It was happening inside him. That's what makes his story different, and that's why this isn't just a channel breakdown. It's a human story, messy, raw, and quietly tragic. If you've followed BeardMeatsFood over the years, you've likely noticed something odd. Periods of silence, times when videos slowed down, moments where Adam disappeared without warning, only to return with the same calm face and the same quiet wit. But something always felt a little different. The edits were tighter, the music slightly more distant. There were fewer jokes, more long pauses. For most fans, it was easy to brush off. He's probably just tired, they'd say, or maybe he's taking a break. But those who really paid attention could feel it. The silence between uploads wasn't just about needing rest, it was a symptom. A quiet cry. A reset. Adam never explained these breaks. He didn't owe anyone an explanation. But each time he came back, you could tell something had changed. Maybe a friend was lost. Maybe he was healing from something physical or emotional. Maybe the weight of pretending everything was okay just got too heavy for a while. That's the thing about YouTube. It rewards noise, energy, performance, but it doesn't always give space for real life, for grief, for heartbreak. And Adam, despite his fame, is still a real person. The silence between uploads was where the real story lived. It's where he processed whatever that thing was that people still whisper about. It's where he regrouped, reflected, and put the mask back on. Because that's what performers do. They show up no matter what. And BeardMeatsFood was never just a fun food show, it became a form of survival. Those quiet gaps, the missed Wednesdays, the sudden weeks of nothing, they weren't accidents, they were necessary. And while most fans just waited patiently for the next mega cheat day, some of us knew. We knew the silence said more than any upload ever could. And it's in that silence that the heartbreaking part of Adam Moran's story truly speaks. Most people think the only weight Adam Moran carries is the massive food challenges he devours on camera. But what if the real weight, the one that truly breaks a person down, can't be measured in pounds or calories? What if it's something far heavier? When you watch BeardMeatsFood videos, you see a man who's in control. But that's just what the camera captures. The truth is, behind every bite, every quirky joke, every empty plate, there's something he's carrying that doesn't get posted. Maybe it started before the channel, before the military, maybe even in childhood, or maybe it came after a tragedy. The thing about real heartbreak is, it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't scream. It sits quietly in the corner, whispering into your ear at 3 a.m. And that's what people missed. They saw a man eating 5,000 calories in 10 minutes and thought, wow, that's insane. But what they didn't see was the way he looked at the floor after the camera shut off, or the way his body slumped once the challenge was over. It's hard to carry pain and still entertain. Harder still to do it weekly for millions of people. Adam never asked for pity. He never made content out of suffering. But if you look close, it's there. In the way he downs food like it's a task, not a joy. In the way he smiles with his mouth but rarely with his eyes. And fans noticed. Comments like, "He seems off lately," or "Hope you're doing okay, mate," started popping up more often. Because even if he never said it, he was hurting. And the heaviest part of it all? He carried that pain alone, wrapped in humor, buried in burgers. That's the kind of weight that no gym can train you for. The kind that leaves invisible scars no one claps for. And yet, he kept going. There was a time when Adam Moran's humor was the secret sauce of BeardMeatsFood. Dry, deadpan, almost awkward, his wit was what made him stand out. Fans loved the contrast between his brutal food challenges and his calm, sarcastic narration. But something changed. Slowly over time, the jokes became fewer. The punchlines softened. The spark that once lit up even the simplest commentary began to dim. Most viewers thought it was just creative fatigue or maybe a style change. But some noticed a deeper shift. The energy was different. The silence between jokes got longer. The pauses more frequent. It was like watching someone go through the motions, still showing up, still performing, but missing that fire behind the eyes. Comedy has always been a way for people to cope. It's a shield, a way to laugh through pain, and Adam wielded that shield for years. But the thing about shields is that over time, even they wear down. The more you depend on them, the heavier they become. That's what happened here. The jokes that once came effortlessly began to feel like weight, like one more thing he had to push through. And sometimes it almost looked like he was trying to convince himself to laugh, that maybe if he kept pretending everything was okay, it eventually would be. But pain doesn't work that way. It leaks through the cracks. And with Adam, it showed up in those empty spaces. When the humor paused, when the eyes wandered, when the smile didn't match the words, he never stopped being funny. But the laughter began to feel more like survival than joy. Fans noticed. Not in loud, obvious ways, but in quiet concern. "You good, mate?" they'd ask. "Take a break if you need it." And maybe that's the tragedy here. Watching someone who brought joy to millions slowly stop laughing himself. Because sometimes the silence after a joke says more than the punchline ever could. You'd think having millions of fans would mean you're never alone. But for Adam Moran, being BeardMeatsFood meant the exact opposite. The more people watched, the more invisible he seemed to become. Everyone knew the brand, the beard, the banter, but very few knew the man behind it. That's the strange paradox of internet fame. You can be seen by everyone and yet feel like no one actually sees you. Adam traveled across cities, sat in crowded restaurants, faced cheering fans, and still carried a kind of loneliness that no camera could capture. You could tell in the way he handled praise. Grateful, yes, but always a little distant. Like he didn't fully believe he deserved it. He once said in a podcast that he spends a lot of time alone, even between challenges, that most of his travel is solo, that after the food is gone and the cameras are off, there's just silence. And it's in that silence that loneliness blooms. Fame brings a strange kind of isolation. Everyone wants a piece of the character, but few care about the real person. And Adam knew that. You could see it in his eyes when fans asked for pictures, unaware of how exhausted he looked. You could hear it in the quiet tone of his voice when he spoke about recharging. Being BeardMeatsFood became a performance, one he did for others, not for himself. And while the numbers grew, so did the distance between him and the world. That's the part fans don't often think about, that the person making you smile might be going to bed feeling more alone than ever. It's not the fault of the audience, it's the nature of the game. But for Adam, the spotlight didn't just shine, it burned. And behind all the views, all the success, all the noise, there was a man sitting quietly, wondering if anyone really saw him at all. Adam Moran built a persona that millions adored. Calm under pressure, iron stomach. But what happens when the persona becomes the prison? Over time, BeardMeatsFood stopped being just a name. It became a mask, one that Adam wore so well, most people forgot there might be someone else underneath. And maybe Adam forgot too. Because once the audience falls in love with the version of you that never struggles, never cracks, never complains, it becomes harder and harder to take that mask off. Even when you're hurting, even when you're tired, even when the person behind it is begging for a break. And so he kept going, city to city, challenge to challenge, smile to smile, all while keeping that mask perfectly in place. You could see it in the predictability of the videos. The same intro, the same tone, the same pacing. At first it was consistency, then it started to feel like survival, because when you build your entire life around an image, changing that image feels like a betrayal. And for Adam, there may have been moments where he wanted to break the pattern, to open up, to say more, to show the struggle. But the fear of losing what he built probably kept him silent. That's what makes it tragic, that a man who helped so many people feel good couldn't give himself the same grace. Fans commented things like, "You're a machine," and "You never miss," meant as praise, but unintentionally adding pressure. Because machines don't get tired. Machines don't cry. Machines don't feel. But Adam isn't a machine. A complex, talented, deeply layered man who's been carrying this brand on his back for years. And somewhere along the way, the mask that once protected him became the thing he couldn't take off, not without risking everything. And that's a heartbreak few people ever see, when being strong for others becomes the reason you suffer in silence. In the world Adam Moran built, there was no room for breakdowns, no room for bad days, no room for being anything less than dependable. Every Wednesday, fans expected a new video, a new challenge, a new smile, a perfectly edited performance that gave the illusion that everything was fine, always. And no matter what was happening behind the scenes, Adam delivered. Through illness, travel fatigue, loneliness, or emotional exhaustion, he still showed up. That kind of consistency is rare, admirable, but it also comes at a quiet, brutal cost. Because once the world sees you as the guy who never misses, the pressure to keep that streak alive becomes suffocating. You stop allowing yourself the simple human right to not be okay. And that's where it starts, slowly. You begin to lie with your smile, you start editing out the parts that feel too raw, too real, too human. You script your laughs, you perform your energy, and little by little, the mask hardens until it's no longer something you wear, it becomes who you are. The man and the persona blur. For Adam, the food challenges weren't just about entertainment. They became his armor. As long as he was filming, as long as he was eating, as long as the next video was uploading, maybe everything was okay. Or at the very least, that's what he needed people to believe. But pain doesn't dissolve just because you cover it with hot sauce and humor. Grief doesn't vanish under piles of fries or a record-breaking milkshake. It lingers, waiting for the moment you slow down just enough for it to catch up. And it always does. Fans would comment things like, "This guy never quits," or "You can't stop BeardMeatsFood," with admiration and affection. And while those words were meant as compliments, they added another invisible weight on Adam's shoulders. Because what if he wanted to stop? What if he needed to? In a world where his identity was tied to resilience, to endurance, to always being on, taking a break started to feel like failure. And failure was never an option. Not when millions were watching. Not when people saw you as a superhero in a hoodie. Adam knew that feeling. He felt it every time he pushed through a video he didn't want to film. Every time he sat alone before or after a challenge, trying to summon the energy to act like everything was fine. He felt it every time he forced a laugh for an audience who had no idea he'd barely slept the night before. That's the real heartbreak here. The pressure to always be okay didn't just become a habit. It became a chain he couldn't shake loose from. Not without risking the very thing he had built his life around. And in a world that celebrates strength above all else, Adam's quiet struggle with vulnerability went unnoticed. Not because people didn't care, but because he never showed it. He never asked for sympathy. He never made a scene. But behind every perfectly edited video, behind every clever caption and bite of food, was a man silently begging for permission to just not be okay. And that's something no one, especially someone who gives so much to others, should ever have to hide. In the end, the tragedy of Adam Moran, the man millions know as BeardMeatsFood, was never truly about food. It was never really about the towering burgers, the impossible calorie counts, or the brutal one-man eating marathons that kept us glued to our screens. Those were just distractions, symbols. The real story lived between the bites, hidden in the quiet spaces he never spoke about. We watched him devour food that would overwhelm the average person, week after week, year after year, and we celebrated his strength, his discipline, his reliability. But what we rarely stop to consider is what it was costing him to keep showing up like that. Because somewhere along the way, BeardMeatsFood stopped being just a YouTube channel. It became a mask, a shield, a machine that never stopped running. And when you're the one wearing that mask, the scariest part isn't the pressure to keep performing. It's the fear that if you ever take it off, even for a second, people won't recognize you anymore. Or worse, they won't stick around. Adam gave us everything. He gave us laughter on bad days. He gave us distraction when the world felt too heavy. He gave us consistency when nothing else online did. And he gave us all of this while, in his own way, quietly suffering. While we were celebrating his records, he may have been nursing heartbreak. While we were commenting legend, he may have been eating alone in a hotel room. While we laughed at the jokes, we missed the sadness sitting behind his eyes. And it wasn't just once. It was a pattern. The missed uploads, the changed tone, the longer gaps between laughs, these weren't creative choices. They were human symptoms, warning signs. But because Adam always made it look effortless, we assumed it was. That's the danger of a perfectly kept persona. It hides the truth so well, even the person wearing it starts to forget they're hurting. But pain doesn't go away just because you don't speak it out loud. In fact, it grows louder. And that silence, the silence between videos, between jokes, between sentences, was screaming for those paying attention. There was always something underneath the surface, something he never quite said. Maybe it was grief, maybe it was burnout, maybe it was just the weight of being everything to everyone, all the time. The internet often rewards the loudest, most outrageous performers, but Adam chose a different route. He was steady, never chasing drama, never using his personal life for clicks. And maybe that's why his story feels so tragic, because it was happening right in front of us and we never knew. Or maybe we just didn't want to know. It's easier to enjoy the show than to ask if the performer is okay. And the hardest part? He never asked for help, never broke character, never leaned on the fame he earned to ask for grace. Because when your identity is built on being unshakable, you start believing that weakness isn't allowed. But no one can carry that kind of weight forever, no matter how strong, no matter how loved.